Hey, how are you today? Welcome to Extra Healthy-ish. This is the big sister podcast to the one called Healthy-ish. Both podcasts from Body and Soul are designed to give you that little bit extra in your day. I am your host, Felicity Hartley. So today I'm speaking with Bonnie Hancock. She was once a champion Ironwoman from the age of 17, and she spent more than a decade alongside her sister Courtney competing in 9 Nutrigrain series. Well, she gave it all up. She wanted something new. So she decided to become an ocean ski paddler. And this December, Bonnie is attempting a world record to become the youngest and fastest person to paddle around Australia. So what drives someone to want to attempt such a mind-blowing feat? And how does she actually get herself physically and mentally prepared? Well, she can fill you in. Bonnie, thank you so much for coming on Extra Healthy-ish. Now, actually, I ask this for everyone who comes on the podcast. How do you stay extra healthy-ish in your life?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's a little different for everyone. For me, it's time in the ocean. I find that's what balances my life as best as possible. So I do spend a lot of time in the office as a dietitian in my clinics, and I love nothing better than getting out in the ocean at the end of the day. I think physically, mentally, everything, spiritually, that's just my happy place. And when I'm spending time in the ocean, I think I'm my best self.
Oh, the healing power of the ocean. It's wonderful, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's rewind a bit just to give listeners a bit of background on, your success. You've already been successful as an Iron Woman. Tell us perhaps give us a highlight of this period of your life.
Yeah, so I grew up in Coffs Harbour with my 3 sisters and family. And at the age of 17, I moved to the Gold Coast with my older sister, Courtney. So we absolutely grew up idolising, Carla Gilbert, and it's all we wanted to do. So I moved up to try and get in that Ironwoman series. I trained at Northcliffe under Pat O'Keefe with all of the Ironwomen there. And yeah, Courtney and I were lucky enough to qualify. I was 17, she was 18. And I spent the next 7 years in that series. So just to make that series was absolutely huge and a turning point. And I was lucky enough to podium in the Ironwoman series and in the Coolangatta Gold in that time, and with my sister win Australian titles and world titles. So I'm so thankful for that period of my life with the Ironwoman racing. And I think those Australian titles and world titles that you win as a team are probably the ones that stand out to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I mean, you obviously you were successful as an Ironwoman competing in surf lifesaving. Why you kind of had a career pivot? Why ski paddling? Talk us through the point where you will realise that perhaps competing as an Ironwoman wasn't really, I suppose bringing you joy. Do I call it that?
No, you're spot on with that. So after those 7 years, I actually took 2 years out of the sport. So it was a forced rest. I was diagnosed with glandular fever. Basically, I was overtraining and was probably quite, to some degree, had that immaturity in overtraining, and probably there were signs around to back off a little, but I thought the more the better. So basically, I, dug myself into a hole, and I had to spend a season out of the sport, which ended up extending to 2 years. It was a blessing in disguise because in that time I was able to finish my university studies and put the effort in that was required. And when I came back, I sort of just had fallen out of love with Ironwoman racing. I'd always looked at the ski paddling. That was always my weakest leg. I saw that as the absolute ultimate in toughness and, strength in females and males as well. And I thought, why not give that a crack? I think I can do this if I spend the same time in my Ironwoman career and working on this one specific discipline. Let's see how we go. I'm always about new challenges. And the second part of that would be with my work as a dietitian. Very hard to fit 2 or 3 training sessions in a day, which is essentially required as an Ironwoman. You're trying to juggle swim, board, ski, running, gym, stretching, anything else outside of that. So just the one discipline, which essentially requires ski and gym with a little bit of cross training, I quickly realized that that was where it was at for me, and it allowed me to work full time and also be able to compete on an elite level.
How did you go about mastering a new skill? I mean, did you have some humps where you're like, oh, why can't I do this?
100%. It's really hard to go from something, I guess you've spent, more than those 10,000 hours, required sort of to master that skill. Been doing the Ironwoman racing for so long, knew all the ins and outs of it, to go to ski paddling, which is like a 5-minute race. It's explosive. Strength was never a strength of mine. To have to get in the gym and learn how to lift weights, like, don't know what I was thinking at the start, but you've got to persist. 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, and then a year later, you're a totally different athlete. You're a different paddler. And it's that different mindset, that explosiveness and power, as opposed to that more endurance. So I absolutely just loved learning a new skill, even though I spent the first couple of months probably really frustrated and not getting the results I wanted. It came with the time and effort, as most things do.
And using your uni studies, how did you incorporate that? I mean, that must have been great, like almost a plus for you, that you could go, okay, I've got to look at my nutrition. How did you change up your diet with the different sports?
Yeah, it's ironic. So when I was younger, I was a really fussy eater. I didn't, love vegetables. And I sort of spent the first couple of years in the Ironwoman series, having just moved up from Coffs, probably with a terrible diet until I studied. And then a huge passion of mine is now working with adolescent athletes on their diet. I've found it's helped me so much, just knowing the timing of the foods and the macronutrients around training, and that experience I had with glandular fever, how nutrition can help with your immune system. So it is a huge passion of mine, through what I guess using myself as a bit of a guinea pig in some ways as well. But definitely it makes a big difference. And it's probably something that's overlooked in the sport of surf lifesaving, because to some degree, we're still a very amateur sport. We don't, like a football team, have a team dietitian. We don't have a team physio. So athletes are often left to find and pay for these things themselves. So I absolutely love helping out the young athletes where I can.
We'll be back after this short break with more from Bonnie. So talk us through the races you've done so far, and how have you gone?
Yeah, so in ocean ski paddling came after surf lifesaving.
Yes, sorry, we should determine that.
Yes, no, absolutely. So after the Ironwoman series and the beginning of my surf ski career, I was able to, in the first year of surf ski racing, win the state titles and win the professional ski series, which runs through the summer of surf. Was then able to get a bronze medal at the Australian titles, which was a huge highlight for me, as I never, ever imagined I could get on the podium.
Wow.
You've got kayakers and that kind of, thank you so much. So that was a real confidence boost for me, because I thought, if I can turn up here and actually get on this podium, like looking along the line of girls, that's enough for me. I sort of feel like that took the pressure off whatever I did from there. I felt like I had to prove to myself. The following year was when I actually moved into ocean ski racing, and I was able to go to Hawaii and race in the Molokai and get a fifth there, and go to Portugal and race in the world titles. And in those sort of races, when you're coming around that top 5, that's an achievement, or I see that as a really big achievement.
Amazing.
So I managed to, because you're looking on a world scale. So sort of some top 5 races there in the ocean ski series. I feel as though there's still more I'd like to achieve in that space. But with my second season in, I'm proud of the results I've gotten so far. There's some phenomenal women in the ocean ski paddling. I mean, Danielle McKenzie, one of my mates, she took out the world titles a couple of years ago. You've got Hayley Nixon, who has won multiple big races around the world. So it's extremely competitive, and it's super cool to see the level the girls are taking it to. So one of those top 3 podiums around the world would be my aim.
Okay, but first, let's talk about your other aim, to get around Australia in a ocean ski paddle. Give us a rundown of what you're attempting to do and why.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So, we go from sort of those 20K ocean ski races, which I used to look at as being huge, in 19th of December, I'll be setting off in an attempt to break the Guinness World Record for fastest person to paddle around Australia on the ski. I'll be the youngest as well if I manage to do so. So in 2009, Freya Hofmeister, she's a German woman, she paddled around Australia and broke that record, which was previously set by men. She did it in 10 months and 22 days. So it's around 16,000 kilometres, give or take, depending on the route that you take. And she did that on a heavy ski. It's 100 kilos fully loaded because she loaded with her supplies. So I've got a team of about 8 coming with me. I've got a 40-foot catamaran, a marine biologist who's the skipper. So it's a big scale project. Absolutely. So he's all over it. I'm learning a lot from him. It's hilarious. When I first had this idea, I just pictured my husband following me around in a tinny, and I thought, oh, that's all that's needed. And we soon looked
with
into
his megaphone. Go,
absolutely.
Go, go.
That's right. Like poor Matt, my husband. We quickly soon realised that would not be safe in any way, shape or form. And there's certain parts of Australia where you can't even come to shore for a week or so. The safest way is to take the direct line and not follow the coast, because you have some sharp cliff faces, and you've got, sections where you save 100 kilometres if you go the direct route.
Right,
so
yeah.
Very soon we realised we were going to have to reach out and get a bit of help from people more experienced than us. And James, our skippers, sailed around Australia before, thank goodness. So we're in good hands.
Oh, good. And let's just briefly talk again about your training. We talked about this in Healthy-ish. What are you doing both mentally and physically to train? Yeah,
and you're right. It's a huge balance of both. So physically, I think most ocean ski paddlers are in really good shape. We train super hard 1-2 times a day, a mix of ski paddling, gym, running. I do a bit of ocean swimming as well. But this is a whole nother level mentally, because essentially it's only been done a couple of times before. It's very unprecedented for me. So basically it's about doing as much research as possible. So we've planned this to the degree, the exact route we're going to be taking, looking at the patterns of the marine life and which direction it will be best to go. For example, up north, top end of the country, we're staying out 20, 30 kilometres to try and avoid the crocodiles who are in a bit further. So we talked to a meteorologist at the start who advises the super yachts, and he advised that the clockwise direction would be the way to go, even though everyone else has done it anti-clockwise. He explained in great depth about the currents and that would be most favourable. So it's been a huge process in planning the logistics, and I think that's helped with the mental side because I've been able to visualise the sections of the coast. And so it's looking more at the logistics of it and being practical about it.
And I suppose, it's probably not, as you say, it's not the sharks and crocodiles are one thing, but the actual conditions that you're going to be in. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's crazy. Like James, our skipper, was saying down the bottom of the Great Australian Bight where you get the cliffs, you can get like 10-foot waves when you have a wave crash into the cliff. So we've raced in some really big surf over the years. So the surf doesn't worry me as much as the marine life. I think I feel like I can't control that as much. I feel like looking at the conditions I can plan and kind of avoid. I mean, maybe I'm naive with that, but it's pretty hectic. I mean, down the bottom, again, in the Great Australian Bight, James is saying there's often weather windows of 3-4 days, and we are possibly going to have to paddle to a certain part. When I say we, I mean me, no one else is with me. Paddle to a certain part, jump on the boat, get to safety, and then come back and restart that again. So it's just about having his experience there. And I mean, every day he's going to be telling me exactly what I've got to do. And I think that's probably better than my husband telling me, which is, again, initially how it was going to go. So better for our relationship, I think.
What do you think the biggest hurdle of the race will be for you?
Yeah, I think from talking to one of the guys who's done it in the past, he said the first couple of weeks, ironically enough, were the hardest because you go into it and you have the positive energy around you and it's the big hype and build up. a week in, when your shoulders feel like they're going to drop off, you realize how far 100K a day is, you've got blisters on your hands, that's when I think it gets very real. And it's just, you're only at the start. I feel as though once you're past halfway, if you're almost on the downward section, he said after a couple of weeks, your body will actually become conditioned to the distance.
Oh, wow.
So it's a really interesting one.
Gosh, our bodies are amazing, aren't they?
They're amazing in how they adapt. So you can't train for this by doing 100K of paddling a day. You'll go in with injury. So you have to, almost the training you're doing is on the job those first couple of weeks. So he said, push through and you will come out the other side. And you know, your skin toughens, like the body's incredible. Your skin will toughen, the blisters will pass. So it's just being really resilient, I think, in those times and learning strategies to adapt as well. And I've got some music to take with me and maybe your podcast I'll have to listen to as well.
Thank you.
So some strategies to pass the boredom as well.
And, finally, you're raising money for a very worthwhile cause, Gotcha for Life. Tell us about this.
Yes. So I learned about Gotcha for Life through our Ocean Ski Paddling series. So Shore and Partners, who are a huge supporter of the Ocean Ski series, they're actually they've come on board as my naming rights sponsor. So they often partner with Gotcha for Life. Gotcha for Life is a mental fitness charity in Sydney. They do amazing things. So they work within school settings and corporate settings to build emotional resilience and educate people on mental fitness. I love that they work with kids as well. I think learning about those skills so young is so important. And, over the last year with the pandemic, we've seen people's mental health greatly suffer. So it's something I'm really, really passionate about raising awareness and funding for. And I think it's going to be a huge driver for me throughout this paddle because it's essentially bigger than myself.
Yeah, Bonnie, love it. Good luck. Congratulations. And we'll be watching. Finish.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Well, watch this space. I think we'll have to have Bonnie back on Extra Healthy-ish when she has completed this amazing feat. If you want more info about Bonnie, if you want to watch her travels around Australia, or if you would like to sponsor her, I'll put all those links in the show notes. If you want more from us, remember Extra Healthy-ish. We publish a new episode of this podcast every morning, Monday to Thursday, or you can listen to Healthy-ish. We publish that one every morning, Monday to Friday. If you want more from us at Body and Soul, jump online at bodyandsoul.com.au or follow us on Instagram or Facebook. Thanks again for listening. And if you have a moment, we'd be so grateful if you could rate, review and subscribe to this podcast. And until tomorrow, stay extra healthy-ish.